Hello and welcome back to the Not Your Neurotypical Fitness podcast. And I've got another epic guest on, and I am very excited for this chat. Very excited to dive into this story. An amazing lady who you might know for things beyond neurodivergence and fitness, because your Instagram's amazing. Like, actually, before we get stuck into like who you are, what you do, and all that good stuff, what kind of prompted your Instagram account and like creating it? Because it's really cool, like what you do, just sharing like relatable life and the home stuff. So, what kind of prompted all that?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me on this podcast. It's super exciting. It's kind of a long story, but I won't get too far into it. But basically, back in June 2021, I was one of those millions of people that got a like COVID puppy during lockdown and stuff. Like I had already wanted a puppy for like the longest time, but I was like, you know what? I'm working from home now. Let's get a puppy. And I guess what had happened was I just wanted to start an Instagram account because I didn't want to spam all of my Facebook friends with like millions of cute puppy pictures every single day. So I was like, maybe I'll just put all of those cute puppy pictures onto an Instagram page. So it kind of just started off with my dog widget. So I was just posting like puppy pictures and we kind of started gaining followers and I posted a funny video with the dog and the cat. And then people were like, wow, we want cat content too. So then it turned into like dog and cat. And then I kind of started showing my face more and people were like, oh, we actually like you as well. So it kind of ended up grouping us all together, and that's how I kind of started like her cozy crew. So it like what started off as just like a pet account kind of snowballed into this whole like crew and family and you know we just bought a house last summer, so I've been kind of incorporating a little bit of like DIY renovations, pet-friendly home, just a little bit of everything that encapsulates us as a crew sort of thing. And that's where I've ended up today. So,
Amazing. I love it. And the reason I kind of thought it'd be quite interesting to say that is people might be like, well, where's this all come from in terms of the podcast and stuff? But obviously, we connected through sort of talking about neurodivergence. And then when I found your profile, I was like, this is so cool. And it's got nothing to do with the topic of what we're going to go into today. But as a dog mom myself and, having my own home now, it was like, I love it. Like, this is just so like relevant to me. So I've not even introduced your name, which is beyond rude. So Carly is here on the podcast, everyone. Obviously, you've introduced a little bit there about what you do from a social media perspective, but outside of posting, the cutest pictures of dogs, cats, and home, like what do we do day? Is Instagram the full-time business at the moment? Is it a side hustle? Is it just fun? Like what do we do day to day?
yeah, so obviously when I first started it was just for fun. And then I started getting like some paid collaborations and things like that, which then ended up turning into me getting laid off from my corporate 9 to 5 office job on my birthday, might I add. That was like if you're gonna lay anyone off on their birthday, I feel like you should be exempt. But silver linings, it all worked out because I ended up just while trying to look for a new office job, I was like, well, I might as well just do content creation like in all my free time that I have. And then slowly it became like I started making more money than I would a 9 to 5, and I didn't want to go into like the office with my pets at home. And I don't know, it just all worked out. And so now I'm just a full-time creator. So I do like Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, just I'm a bit everywhere. So
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And we're going to obviously chat a little bit about like balancing working for yourself, well-being as part of today's episode. So diving into today's episode, we wanted to really dive into your journey around neurodivergence, fitness, health, and well-being, because it's obviously what I do. It's my bread and butter. It's what this podcast is about. It's what my business is about. And hearing sort of everyone's unique stories and perspectives is really interesting because a lot of the time, the typical sort of approaches and molds they don't quite work for us, and it's really great to hear like your own unique experiences. But if we rewind the clocks in terms of your story with neurodivergence, what is your sort of diagnosis journey? Because everyone looks different. Some people were diagnosed as children, some people would never been diagnosed but they resonate and it's self-diagnosed. Like, what's your personal journey with it?
yeah, so my personal journey with that is I feel like growing up, I like always was a little neurodivergent. And I think parents, especially with, young girls and things like that, like typical ADHD would be like a young boy who's like jumping off the walls, not sitting down in class. But, with girls and women, a lot of things are more internalized. So growing up, I had a lot of anxiety, which I think my parents maybe thought were just like quirks sort of thing. So growing up like at 5 years old, when there was like a fire drill at school, I was like bawling my eyes out and like having a panic attack over things like that, which looking back now as an adult, I think my fear of like a fire alarm was like not being in control of things, which is very like ADHD kind of like with women and wanting to be like in control but not having control and like like your brain is a little bit chaotic. But I think I was really I was really struggling a lot more as an adult, especially being self-employed.
Mm.
And a couple of years ago, I was kind of going through like a bunch of burnout and I just like felt awful and felt like I just needed like direction or something. So I ended up, starting therapy and getting an ADHD diagnosis and starting some like medication and supplements and things like that, which really helped. Obviously, like we all struggle still, but I find that it was almost eye-opening being like all the things that I struggled with in life, you know, I think a lot of people wish that they were diagnosed sooner because obviously I was diagnosed at 28 years old. So I think like what would my life have been like, if I had been diagnosed back at 5 when I, was deathly afraid of fire drills and stuff like that. But obviously we can't go in the past. We're just in the future now. But that's kind of my journey with that so far is it's only been 2 years since my diagnosis, but I've learned a lot about myself in that time.
Mm. I think a lot of people can resonate with that feeling of like, oh, I've been diagnosed and now so much of my life makes sense and I really understand myself more. But kind of going back a little bit again, when you obviously went and got the therapy with the burnout, were you going to the therapy with the knowledge that I might have ADHD? Like, what always did it get presented on you? Like, how did it come on your radar that actually potentially some of these challenges that you're having are down to having a neurodivergent brain?
Yeah, I think it's just how I was struggling with things and, when she was asking me questions and like digesting that kind of thing. She did like a couple of assessments for like ADHD, autism, OCD and things like that. And then she kind of like pointed me in the direction being like, ADHD, if you have ADHD, you might have all these other things too. Like all of those things are like so grouped together. If you have one, then you might have another, but we kind of just went down with like the ADHD for now, at least. Like I do have like some forms of like OCD and things like that, but I just kind of lump it into like the whole ADHD aspect. So that's kind of how I got the diagnosis and like starting medication and kind of just learning ways that work better for me that obviously don't work for neurotypical people. So
And whether it's linked to fitness or well-being or not, it'd be quite interesting to hear like what are some of the things that you've started to change and adapt because when I think again a lot of people can resonate that when you get that diagnosis and you actually understand, well, that's why I struggle with X, that's why Y feels easy for me. You can make a lot of, like you said, adaptations that neurotypicals wouldn't do, or it might not feel conventional, but it can really elevate your mood and your productivity. So if there's anything you can think of off the top of your head that, any tweaks or adaptations that you've made, that'd be really cool to kind of hear what you've done to support yourself.
yeah, I think one of the most important things is to just be kind to yourself. Like there's always that like devil on your shoulders, like almost that's always just like, if you're not good enough or, it's so easy to compare yourself, especially like in my career of being a content creator, like everything's online. Like I could see like a friend or someone that, oh, well, like look how good their pictures look or their videos or the brand deals that they're getting, like there's always that like thing inside your head that's always like trying to be like harsh to you. So I find that what really like works for me is just trying to be kinder to myself, and being more gentle and trying to remind myself. I think mindfulness is really important with this aspect is like you don't realize before practicing mindfulness, like how tense I'd be in some things, like I'm writing an email, but like my whole body is just, like so tense and focused, like just trying to remind myself to, take a few deep breaths. I find people with ADHD, we are not breathing enough. We all need to just take some deep breaths a few times, more than a few times a day. Anytime you think that about, oh, I'm so stressed, I have so much to do, like just take 3 deep breaths
Yeah.
and be kind to yourself, like have patience. Not everything has to be 100% or zero because that's something that I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I'm either not doing something or I'm doing it 100%. Like I'm just trying to meet myself in the middle some days where, it
Mm.
doesn't have to be 100% perfect. We can take our time. You can get up and stretch and take a break, like not everything is a rat race of rushing around constantly. So I think like the number one thing is just being like try to be more calm or just more mindful sort of thing.
Was the lack of that, do you think, a big contributor towards the burnout of like just constantly being stimulated, constantly driven to do everything and do it to the best of your ability? Do you think that was like what contributed towards that like burnout cycle that you were in?
Totally. Like, I think just the perfectionism and like, getting like that dopamine hit of like, oh yeah, I completed that task to the point where all of a sudden you've been at your computer for 8 hours, you haven't even gone to the bathroom or drank a sip of water because you're just so like focused on getting that task done. Um, so I think that's been like that definitely led to, burnout and struggling a little bit more was just like the all or nothing mindset. So I'm trying to change my mindset to like good enough, which I know for some people that might be like, what do you mean like just good enough, But I find that, you know, done halfway is better than done but stressed and crying and things like
100%.
that. So
I always say it's all or something. Like, yeah, all is great, but so something, Like as long as we're doing something towards our goals, like that's okay.
yeah.
That's great.
And half the time people won't even notice. Like if I'm sitting here editing, a carousel and I can't figure out how to perfect the text to fit in a certain way, do you think anyone is going to notice that I was
Right.
crashing out for an hour over it? No. So I try and tell myself like there's little things that people won't even notice that I don't have to like perfect because no one's going to notice it anyways.
Exactly. Zooming out the bigger picture. So linking, obviously, I mean, it's all really relevant, like the well-being, when I talk about health and fitness, it isn't just the gym and calories. Like it is about stress and burnout. And like with what I do, I always say it's emotions first. Like if you want to achieve anything, whether it's a fitness goal or a business goal or whatever, like your emotions and your stress management has to come like numero uno. So that's amazing. And it'd be interesting to kind of hear like how working on that has impacted things from your health and fitness. But coming back to sort of like your sort of fitness journey, your well-being journey, what did that look like sort of growing up? Has fitness, well-being always been on your radar? Was it something that you struggled with in younger years, maybe linked to your ADHD? What does that look like for you sort of growing up to now?
Yeah, I think I've always had I would say almost like a negative mindset around like fitness and things like that. Because once again, it's like that all or nothing
Yeah.
where, you know, growing up, especially as a teenager, like those times are always like harder.
Mm.
So I think I struggled with my weight a bit. Um, and I was mostly just like underweight because I just, I wasn't eating as much. I also wasn't working out. Like I don't know, I just had like a bad mindset about things. And then as I like grew up and went to college and then finished college, well, I guess college is kind of where everyone kind of, I guess they call it like the freshman 15
Yeah.
sort of thing. I don't know if you guys have it there, but
We have
so
expressed
then
it.
I,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, so and then I gained a bunch of weight. And for a while there, like in my 20s, like I was, um, a like not quite overweight, but I was like on the bigger side of things. And then that also leads like, if you're too small, it's negative. If you're too big, it's negative. But then I also just struggled with like the mindset of like working out. And, I tried going to the gym with friends, and just as an ADHD person who is more of a night owl than a morning person, trying to go 3 days a week at 6:30 in the morning to go and work out, like I feel was a little bit unrealistic. I did do it for a while, but it almost like it was too like rigid, So I find now giving myself more grace and that kindness, has like really helped me come a long way with like my relationship with fitness and wellness and things like that.
Yeah, and it's interesting. A lot of people that I speak to have like very similar experiences with like quite some people it is more kind of like traumatic negative in the respects of like maybe they're told they were lazy at school, maybe they're different, they got picked last. But sometimes it can just be that almost like feeling like it's inaccessible because of the standard way of doing things, like if you're a perfectionist but you're not quite great at like, because I remember I was luckily very fortunately quite good at like dance and loved that side of movement, but I know if I'd not had dance I'd have really hated and had a poor relationship with exercise because I was never quite good enough to make the teams. If I want to if I'm doing football, I'm making the team. If I'm doing netball, I'm making the team. That driven perfectionism. I was never good enough. So I kind of didn't like that. But because I found something I liked, I was okay. Um, and like you said, generally there's like rules, isn't that we train at this time, we do this. And like for neurodivergence, that can not always work. So then you can create this relationship that I'm not good at exercise or I don't like exercise because you don't like the way it's done, not necessarily the movement itself. So now that obviously you've got the diagnosis, like what then was there something about like obviously the burnout and then realizing you need to look after yourself, or what kind of then changed or has changed that's maybe giving you more like of an oomph to get into movement? And what have you been doing in terms of sort of like the exercise and movement side of things to work with yourself, and how are you making that happen?
Yeah, so I think like after my diagnosis and kind of diving into, maybe the algorithm was, showing me TikTok videos of things that would help and things like that. To see other people's perspective on like what worked for them, what didn't work for them, and, giving myself grace, being like, okay, well, it might work for that person, but it's not going to work for me, but I can always just try it sort of thing. And then I kind of became more of this like a woo-woo kind of girly, like the spiritual side of things, which I think honestly like helped me a lot because I decided let's just try meditation, It's 5 minutes of a guided meditation. Like what could go wrong with 5 minutes of sitting in silence? If it does nothing, that's better than sitting there anxious kind of thing. So I kind of started that, which kind of helped me like be more mindful when it comes to like fitness and things like that. So like yoga, I feel like yoga is kind of like underrated on like moving your body and things like that. Especially for me, sitting at my desk all day, like there's nothing my body craves more than to do like a 20-minute yoga session, like watching a YouTube video kind of thing. So I think changing my mindset of exercise, like it doesn't have to be waking up at 7 a.m., going to the gym, drinking creatine in water, tasting like chalk kind of thing, like I had to find something that I enjoyed doing
Mm.
because there are people, and I feel like maybe these people are more neurotypical where they're like, just start going to the gym, you'll get into the routine kind of thing. I can't. Like routine, as much as I'd love to have a routine, it's just not realistic. There are some days I wake up and I'm like ready to conquer the world, and there's other days where it's hard to get out of bed. And I just have to give myself grace and be like, okay, well, maybe instead of a 30-minute yoga and like a 10-minute arm workout at home, maybe I'll just do like 5 minutes each because done is better than nothing at all? So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's removing that kind of like all or nothing, that it has to be a full workout or it has to be this. And we know that interest is one of the key drivers of motivation in ADHD. So this is what I teach to a lot of people that come to me is like, right, so okay, you want to do this. And if you're struggling, we need to find something that you're interested in. Just because my sort of typical approach with training is to go to a gym, do some sort of cardio, do some weight training. Like that's what most people do who work with me. And if you enjoy that, fantastic. But we need to find a way that you enjoy it. Because I know when my first year of uni, gained a lot of weight as well. I wanted to get back into looking after myself. And so I tried to go to the gym and I tried classes. I tried to do classes. And it was literally like torture. You know, I was clock watching, dragging myself there. I hated every second. And had I not found something that I really enjoy and get a lot of dopamine and a lot of pleasure from, I think I would still be battling to this day, you know? So it's so important, like you said, you've got to find something that maybe isn't the trend, maybe it isn't conventional, but you can't just force yourself to like it. I think it's the same like food, right? You can't force yourself to like a certain food. You either like a food or you don't. I think
Yeah.
movement is the same. I do genuinely believe there is a form of movement out there that everyone can get on board with, even if it's not your favorite, but you can get on board with it. Like, you know, there's certain foods that you don't love, but you can eat day to day.
Hmm.
I do think movement is the same. And
Yeah.
removing that perfectionism, like, but it's not a full year, it's not full this, or it's full, does it matter? Like, if it's allowing you to, because it sounds like you're quite consistent with it now. And when we say consistency with ADHD, we don't mean like 3 days a week, an hour. It's just you're doing it here and there and enough to look after yourself, which is amazing.
Yeah. And I think people with ADHD and things like that, it's just kind of getting out of your, I don't know, getting out of your shell and like trying new things. Like I have a friend who started rock climbing, and her form of exercise now is rock climbing because it's challenging. She's made friends at the rock climbing gym, so it's not a conventional gym kind of thing, but she loves it. And I have another friend who loves like spin class. I tried a spin class once, and I thought I was just going to die and stay locked in with the pedals and just like slump over. So I'm not sure if that was my type of thing, but there's some people like I think she goes every single day. Like she absolutely loves it. So I think with like neurodivergence and stuff, it's just, trying new things, even if it's just once. Like just sign up for one class. If you don't like it, you never have to go back. Like
Exactly.
just trying to find what works well.
100%. And everyone vibes with different things. Like some people who are a bit more introverted might enjoy. So I generally prefer training on my own in my own little world. Every now and again, it's nice, but I'm not like a because I've had a few people at the gym like, oh, come to these classes. I'm like, I don't like the idea of being around other people, but some people love that, don't they? They thrive in being like a community, whether it's a group or a class or a run club. So again, it's experimenting. Like if you're struggling doing it solo, maybe you need a group environment. If you're forcing that group environment, actually, you might find if you go and do it on your own and put your own music on, you're in your element, which I know I am. So yeah, getting out your comfort zone, trying things, and like again, that perfectionism. Just because you've signed up to it and committed to it, if you do it once and you don't like it, so what? Like it's again, it's a bit like food, isn't it? If you try a new food and don't like it, so what? Don't do it again. It's all right. Like the world still
Exactly.
carries on, doesn't it?
Totally.
Amazing. And in terms of like the nutrition side of things, you obviously mentioned younger years, sort of being sort of a bit underweight and then a little bit overweight. Like there's no real battles going on. But did you notice, is there anything that you now notice and know now that you are diagnosed that maybe there was patterns with your food or eating that were sort of like neurodivergence, but obviously you didn't realize at the time when you were growing up? Anything there that you can pick up on?
Yeah, I feel like maybe in like my 20s, I just didn't eat the healthiest. Whether that was, the ADHD, you're in college, in class all day, the cafeteria, they never have healthy options. And if they do, they're like 3 times the price. So I ate a lot of like bagels and like wraps that had like fried chicken and like potatoes in them kind of thing. So not the healthiest. And then our local pizza place was like 50% off for students. And so I could get like an extra large pizza delivered to my dorm for like $10, and that pizza would last me like 4 or 5 days. So it was just like a cheaper option, to eat those kind of things. But now being like diagnosed and on medication and stuff, like I'm strict with like having a higher protein
Mm.
breakfast. Um, which I guess I'm not a super conventional breakfast person. So I'm not like a Greek yogurt and fruit kind of gal. I usually have like a chicken wrap. I don't know if you've seen the like Kirkland chicken breast chunks. They're like chicken nuggets
Okay.
essentially, but they're like higher protein. And I usually eat it with like a keto wrap, which has surprisingly like 90% of your daily fiber intake. So I'm like, well, there we go. We got some protein and we got fiber. Like we're good to go. And for lunch, I usually just have like a light snack. But for dinner, like I've been trying to focus more on like whole foods. So just trying to have less processed things and more whole foods. So like chicken breast, but then I'll like roast a bunch of vegetables together and maybe have like a little bit of rice and things like that. So
Mm.
just trying to like even my fiance and I, we used to have takeout. I would say like not a ton, but enough that it was like I'd rather save that money that we're spending on takeout and then once a month go to like a nice steakhouse or something
Oh.
instead. Like, why are we eating this like crappier food like all the time if we can just save that money and, treat ourselves to something that's like
Mm,
better quality and more expensive, obviously. But if we're saving money not eating
exactly.
takeout, you know. But don't get me wrong, we still have takeout every once in a
Oh
while.
yeah, 100%.
Like, but I don't know, just trying to eat more whole foods because you don't even realize when you are eating more processed foods how it actually affects how you feel,
Until
you
you
know?
until you change it. Yeah.
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 So, if I eat a couple slices of pizza at night, like I'm full on like crashing. Like I just get so like tired from eating like heavily processed foods. But I find if I have like fish and a salad, I still have energy. Like it's not making me as tired and like groggy as like other kinds of foods
Mm.
would and things like that.
Yeah, there's two really interesting things you've said there. So the first you said I don't have a conventional breakfast. Again, I think this is a lot of the removing the perfectionism with like a neurodivergent brain of like, well, a healthy breakfast should look like this and a healthy meal should look like this. And it's like, well, I always think of it like you've got to just think of it like as the basic components. So like if you have Build a Bear, don't you, over there as
Yeah.
well? And you pick the bear and then you pick the fluff. And I kind of think of building a meal a bit like that. Like, right, pick a protein, pick a fiber. If you want to pick like an outfit, i.e. like a fat or a carb, you can. And then, but how you do that, it does not matter. Like it doesn't matter if it's a conventional, you know, eggs, avocado on toast. It doesn't matter if it's this. It doesn't matter if you want chicken and rice for breakfast because that's easy to make. It doesn't matter. And sometimes my meals almost look more like bomb's gone off in my kitchen and I've just grabbed whatever's near. Like it's not necessarily conventional. Like last night, I had, um, I was running late and I had like a power cut and stuff, so I just grabbed whatever I could. So I had like some rice cakes, some flavored ones with some meat that I'd cooked earlier and some avocado, and it just looked more like a snack than a meal. But again, there's some fiber. There's some protein. And so it just needs to be that. And I think, again, if you can remove that perfectionism of like, well, it's not going to be a perfect meal, so I'll just have a snack or I'll just skip it. Um, and you were saying as well about like it makes me feel really good. And a lot of people with ADHD struggle with making these better choices. Like we know whole foods and proteins and fibers. I think everyone knows, you taught it from like when you're a child, that those foods are really good for us, but they struggle because your more snacky processed things are so much more accessible. They're much more dopamine inducing. And you've managed to sort of override that by really focusing on how it makes you feel. But do you have any sort of tips or strategies or anything that's helped you to eat really healthy? Because it's something that a lot of neurodivergents struggle to get into the groove with because cooking's requires more executive functioning and a pizza is going to give me a lot more dopamine. So what's helped you to get into these like grooves and patterns, do you think?
I would say, and I know people say this all the time, is like don't go to the grocery store hungry.
Yes,
Like
yes. Yeah.
I know people are just like, oh, like whatever, but honestly, I feel like that 100% helps me make better choices, Like I try not to go to the grocery store like starving because, you take one wrong turn and you're down like the snack aisle and then I'm like, oh no, what have I done? Sort of thing. So another thing that I recently started doing was where I live, we have something called like Odd Bunch, and they deliver fruit and vegetables like every week to your doorstep. So
Wow.
it's really convenient and it's kind of fun because you get that like dopamine of like a mystery box almost, like you never know what Labubu color is going to be inside the box. So it's kind of like that with fruits and vegetables.
I like it.
So I get like this like giant box and I open it up and there's a bunch of different fruits, vegetables, and then sometimes there's like different kind of things in there that like I normally wouldn't try. So it kind of makes me think outside the box for like dinner ideas or try a different fruit that like I don't normally have. So you're
Yeah,
kind of getting that like dopamine hit of like a mystery
I
box,
like it.
which is really interesting. Like I think this week we had like there was like cotton candy grapes
Oh,
inside of
that's so
it.
nice. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. And also it's that executive functioning thing as well of like if you're neurotypical, like just just pick some fruit out. But when you're like, "All right, I'm gonna try and eat healthy, but what do I eat? And how should I make it? And all these kind of like hoops to jump through, it can lead to you just not taking action on the thing. Whereas if it's kind of like predetermined for you, and like you said, you've got that like dopamine hit of like, oh, what is it? And a bit of novelty and a bit of excitement, making something that, I mean, realistically, eating fruit and veg is not the most exciting thing in the world. Like, even as a fitness coach, I'm not gonna lie and pretend that it is. But turning it into it like that, I think that's a really cool idea, and I really like that. Like, I'm gonna see if we've got something like that now because I want to do it. That sounds really fun.
Yeah, it's really cool and just like makes me think outside the box for dinners too. Because sometimes I do like, I know that there's some people, ADHD people out there that like hate cooking and like they don't want to like, the mic like Chef Mike is your best friend kind of thing, which we don't even have a microwave in our house right now. So, but no, I personally like cooking because
Mm,
I feel like it's a time for me to disconnect from everything else. I
absolutely.
put on a podcast with my headset on and I just cook. And that way it makes me not think about everything else going on in my life, just makes me focus on making something that's good, and
Love it.
tastes good.
I love it.
So,
So what's kind of helped you is obviously creating that novelty and urgency, really focusing on like how it makes me feel. And I think a lot of neurodivergence, we live in the moment, don't we? We make decisions based on feelings, but actually, if you can think about the feeling of, well, yes, that'll give me quick dopamine, but this will also make me feel really good too in a different way is good. And also like turning like the task of like a lot of people hate the idea of cooking and planning. And it's one of the things that I do recommend to people is like, can you make the whole experience something that's maybe giving you a bit of dopamine or a bit of down regulation? Like that's what you're doing, right? You're using that time to not only eat well, but regulate yourself like it's a mindfulness. Because I think with mindfulness and neurodivergence, when we think mindfulness, we think sitting down, bubble bath, meditate, don't move. I think movement-based mindfulness for neurodivergence is so much better, whether it's tidying, cooking, going for a walk, because just for me, the idea of just sitting down and doing nothing, and that's not relaxing to me. But if I can put on some music and do things, I really find that helpful. I'm guessing you do too by what you said there.
yeah, I feel like my holy trifecta is literally like cooking, tidying, and going for walks, like with my dog. Like those are my happy things. Like I just love to like I use those things of movement to disconnect from things, like listen to some music, listen to a good podcast. I'm not looking at my phone if I'm walking my dog or cooking or tidying up. So it's just a good way to like disconnect and focus on that task. And for me, with my ADHD, is that like a chaotic environment is a chaotic mind. So I have to have things like neat and tidy. And thankfully, I have the ADHD that likes that kind of thing. So I just love tidying up around the house and making things look good because it just makes my mind feel better.
I love that. Amazing. And just to kind of like wrap up and circle back to, I know we mentioned in our chat when we connected about linking sort of like the well-being to working for yourself. Now, not every single one of my listeners is going to be self-employed, but a lot of people will be. And when you do become self-employed and have to, you know, no one's telling you what to do. If you want to move forward, you have to do it yourself. How has sort of looking after yourself with the health and fitness benefited or contributed to sort of productivity? Or on the flip side, what have you learned from being self-employed potentially that you've then applied into your health and well-being journey? And because I do really think there is a massive link of when you're looking after yourself, things in business and productivity improve. And on the flip side, I've noticed it when everything feels really regulated and good in business. I'm much better with myself, like looking after myself on that side too.
Yeah, I think trying to find a balance is really hard, especially with like ADHD and stuff. Growing up, your teacher would say like, "Oh, read page 60 to 80," and then, your parents are like, "Go to bed at 10 p.m." Like you had people giving you the structure that you need almost. But then when you're self-employed, you're like what do I do with like all this time? And then you end up focusing on the wrong thing. So you're sitting at your desk for 12 hours, but you haven't like moved your body at all, sort of thing. So I think trying to find a good balance, it takes time. Like I still think that I'm not at my like fully optimized flow. But I do think like trying to like wake up and get some movement in the morning is really important. And maybe not setting, like if you're self-employed, not setting such a strict schedule.
Mm.
Like whether you're rushing or taking your time, like those things are still going to get done, you know? So sometimes I feel like I'm trying to rush to, oh, I want to start work at like 9 a.m. But you know what? Why don't I just start at 9:30 and get in some morning yoga or taking the dog for a walk around the block because the weather's really nice, like just trying to get some sort of movement in because I find, especially with ADHD, is that like movement makes you feel so much better because that energy is no longer like internalized energy. You're kind of getting that like like this like a dog zoomies kind of thing, like instead of having all that pent up energy and like that can quickly turn into frustration with work or you start spiraling with that little gremlin on your shoulder that's telling you you're not good enough. But I find that like taking time to exercise and eat well and stuff like that really has an impact even on my like work itself. So just making sure to set aside some time and take breaks throughout the day to try and, regulate yourself.
Yeah, I think a lot of self-employed people do struggle with that because we see taking a break as unproductive because that's time that I could be growing the business or doing this or doing that. But the more regulated you are and the more calm you are and the more you're well fueled, whether that's through sleep or hydration or food, the more productive you are. And I think you, again, when you were saying about, you don't realize how bad you feel eating a lot of processed food until you start to shift your diet. I think the same is like for regulation. Like you don't realize how dysregulated or unproductive you actually are until you start to incorporate more breaks, movement, good nutrition into your day. It completely transforms. Oh, actually, I've got more done in less time because I'm not sat around tired, unfocused, anxious, whatever, like you haven't managed to release because you've not looked after yourself.
Yeah, 100%. That is definitely like something that I've noticed um like lately is, just taking more time to do things and taking time to move your body and things like that, it might seem at first that like, oh, I could be, you know, working so much more in this time. But like you said, you can actually get more done in a shorter amount of time if you're just taking care of your mind and your body first.
I know my most productive days are the days where I go to the gym earlier, like without a doubt. Like movement makes me productive, makes me positive. It's that like there's some like research which is really interesting around like the link between like the initiation of movement, like doing something and then it's supporting that task initiation. Whereas I know if I've not moved, sometimes I can sit here and be like, what do I do? And then I've wasted like half an hour. Like, do I start this? Do I start that? Whereas I know when I've come straight from the gym, I'm in this kind of like go mindset and I'm just so much more productive. So it is. So you mentioned that you don't feel like you're in your optimal state. And if I'm honest, I don't think we're ever going to reach this perfect flow of balance. I think we're always going to be refining and tweaking. But just kind of thinking about like the future, both in the respect of your own sort of health and fitness and well-being journey. Because I do think this is another thing with a lot of neurodivergents think, a lot of my clients come to me and say things like, I don't have these big goals. Like we're doing a little challenge in my community at the moment where we've all have like monthly focuses and everyone's ticking it off. And someone came to me and said, like, but I don't have any like big things that I'm working on. I'm like, but it doesn't always have to be like, like I just did a half marathon last weekend. It doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be shredding loads of weight. Sometimes it is just keeping these little habits going because it makes you feel good. So I'd like to hear a bit about like, do you have any big goals or is it just that? Because I think either way it's inspiring for people. And then also I'm interested and curious, I'm sure the listeners are too, to hear about like, do you have any visions or plans for um the brand, the business of like things you want to do, things you want to achieve over the sort of the coming years?
Yeah. So I think kind of what like I don't have like a big goal like health and fitness wise. Obviously, like we plan on getting married next year. So I do want to, look a little bit more toned in my arms for the pictures and things like that. But I think my bigger focus is just trying to, I know I keep circling back to like this whole mindfulness thing, but just trying to take things slower because if my body is constantly in a state of stress, like it is so difficult to accomplish anything, whether that's work, health, fitness, like if I'm always like go, 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 I find that it makes me just so tense and tired. So one thing that, I always try and work on because I am not a morning person is trying to like get up in the morning and just like move, whether that's walking the dog quickly or doing 5 minutes of stretching, just like something. Because like you said, the days where I don't have like anything planned and I'm kind of, just staying in bed a little bit longer, like I find those are the days where I'm just like more sluggish overall. But if I have an appointment at like 9 a.m. or something and I'm like out of the house, like, sun is in my eyes kind of thing, I feel so much better because I get home and I'm like, wow, like it's, 9 a.m. and I'm awake and I'm like ready to take on the day rather than, staying in bed and kind of scrolling on social media and things like that. So I think like just trying to challenge yourself to just, you know, wake up 10 minutes earlier, get some movement in, and then see how you feel. And I think journaling in this aspect is also important. Like keeping track of like I woke up at this time and I did like 5 minutes and then, writing at the end of the day how you felt about the day. And you'll soon realize that like getting up and moving, those are going to be the days that you actually feel better and are more productive and get things done. So,
I love that. And I love like it's really nice to hear and I actually want my list because obviously we think health and fitness podcasts, everything's gonna be big, big goals. And I'm obviously being a fitness person. I do set big, crazy goals. I've got like, do I want to run a marathon? Like all this crazy stuff. But actually, there is so much to be said of actually setting goals that are just enhancing your life that 1%. Like every percent matters in terms of well-being and health and mood. And so even if it is just like right now, I'm just focusing on these little small things that matters. And I think there is actually a lot to be said for setting these little, small, and not so sexy, Instagrammable, fitness goals, but actually they matter so much. And to be honest, they matter more in the grand scheme. Like you achieving that mindfulness is actually going to have a much more powerful impact on your life than me running a marathon. Because I do the marathon, it's shiny, it's great, but it's done. Whereas that is going to impact and benefit your life every single day. So I think these little goals that people think, but it's not exciting saying drinking more water or eating more protein. This person's losing all this weight and doing a photo shoot. Actually, what's going to have the bigger impact is these little things versus the big, sexy goals, which is still fun, but not as actually impactful on like life quality. And what about the business then? Because I love the account. Like when we connected and I was like, oh my God, you're my kind of person. Like home stuff, dog stuff. Like that is literally my life pretty much at the moment is sorting my home out and my dog. So is there any kind of like, because obviously you mentioned like brand deals and collaborations. Is there anything you really want to achieve or is it kind of just like keep going and see where the world takes me and like not put pressure on myself?
yeah, I think excuse me. This year I'm trying to not put as much pressure on myself and, trying not to compare myself to others and try and prove to myself that like taking things slower, I can still be just as productive. I can make just as much money, if not more, from, really working on myself so that I'm not at this like state of burnout because like last year in December, I had so many deadlines and stuff. And honestly, like I just hit like a breaking point almost of just like exhaustion to the point where like opening up Instagram like almost made me like anxious. So I'm like, I have to make changes. Like I have to, if I'm drinking some tea, just like not looking at my phone, just sitting there and, journaling instead, like just making those tiny 1% changes, like you said, will in fact end up making me like a better person. But when it comes to like an actual goal, I do have a website and I've been trying to work on like blogging instead of just, creating like a video that, you know, I feel like videos, like Instagram videos, like it might go viral for like a couple weeks and then that's it. But with a blog is forever kind of thing. And I'm kind of using my blog now to kind of almost journal more. So I'm like trying to talk about myself, but helping others and things like that. So I'm trying to get back into writing and more reading, obviously. So I think those kind of things is kind of what I'm working on as a whole. So no big goals. I feel like I'm not a big goal girly for 2026. That was 2025 and maybe 2027, but I think 2026 is kind of embracing the more like cozy side of her cozy crew.
I love it. And we do need these times as well. You cannot be like pushing all the time because that's
Hmm.
what leads to the burnout, isn't it? Just driving after things all the time.
Yeah.
That has been absolutely an awesome chat. And I really know there's going to be a lot of value in terms of like listening to the things that you've done and the approaches that you've taken that I think is going to give people a lot of peace that actually you don't need to be go, go, go all the time. And actually, these little small changes can have such a positive impact on your life when you do it in a way that works for you. So, on that note, I know we've mentioned sort of like the Instagram a few times, but where I'll tag it in the notes as well in the description, but where can people find you if they've listened to this and they want to come and connect with you on social media?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm pretty much on every social media. I think Instagram is my biggest one that I like use the most frequently. So that would just be her cozy crew. And then I'm on TikTok, Facebook, and all that. But if people want to like send me a message on Instagram just to like chat about mindfulness or, taking things slower, it's definitely something that I'm gonna post about a little bit more like in like coming up about embracing the cozy side of things. So yeah, if they want to reach out, and I have a really cute dog and two really cute cats. So if you just
Yes.
want some cute animals, like just go look at my page.
Who doesn't love cute animals? And I think people are either dog or cat people, so there's something for everyone. You're either both or you're a dog or a cat person, so there'll be
Yeah.
something for you on her page. But thank you so much for your time. It has been a wonderful chat. And for all of the listeners, I personally will see you on the next episode.